Hello, I'm Michelle Leduc-Catlin. Welcome to episode 8 of season 1 of Trued Up, the podcast that invites you to be the change. My guests today are not public speakers. They are soft-spoken and introverted. They are intelligent and earnest and have faced the most horrific backlash for exposing what is wrong and standing up for what is right. They are not big talkers, and yet they continue to publicly dredge up nightmarish memories that most of us would want to forget. And why would they do this? Because they know that they are not the only ones. Because they know that their recovery is in speaking out. And because they have the courage to tell their story, they cannot and should not be ignored. The fact is, the subjects we're going to discuss today are difficult. I don't feel like I have appropriate words or even references. But what we have begun to reveal in the past few years is a shocking level of corruption and even malevolence in our society. Did we know in the before times that human trafficking existed? Yes. That child pornography runs rampant on the internet? Of course. But these horrors felt far away and too ugly for most people to face. The problem is, darkness exists because we are unwilling to shine a light on it. Decades ago, when I first started my journey of personal and spiritual growth, a coach gave me a little piece of blue paper torn from a book of quotes. The piece of paper lived in my wallet for years. Long after both the paper and the wallet were gone, the quote stayed imprinted on my heart and mind as a kind of mantra. What you can't communicate runs your life. It's not that we need to or should communicate everything to everyone. Some things are better left unsaid. Some are inappropriate. And some serve not to forward anything, but actually destroy communication and understanding and prevent healing and wholeness. But the inability to tell the truth for fear of repercussions is the very thing that prevents our true selves, our greatest selves, from shining through. It is also the very thing that has the guilty double down and continue to perpetuate dangerous lies. When we are not afraid of the truth, we are strong and resilient. We can admit mistakes, learn from them, and move on. Of course, it's not always easy. But as with any muscle, we get stronger the more we exercise it. I call this spiritual hormesis. It's kind of like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Today, we are shining a light on the story of Dale and Kaysha Richardson, a father and daughter caught in a web of corruption that far too few of us know about and far too many have experienced. This is the little-known story about exposing COVID corruption through HVAC infection control guidelines created by the CDC. It is the story of two whistleblowers who were jailed, drugged, tortured, raped, trafficked, and nearly destroyed. But it is also, in the context of this show, the story of how two people trued themselves up to their values when the vast majority of people would and did turn away. Dale and Kaysha's story is not an easy one, but if they can tell it, we can hear it. Today, I invite you to listen generously and compassionately. Since Kaysha was in a location in the U.S. that she was sharing, there is a bit of background noise. I ask you to bear with it as I invite you to meet my courageous guests today on Trued Up. I want to start by first giving you the opportunity to start wherever you want, and then we'll delve into where you are now and how you're dealing with all of this. So I guess, Dale, the story starts with you, so maybe you should begin.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm a mechanical engineering technologist. I got a Bachelor of Technology in Engineering and Applied Sciences from Memorial University of Newfoundland. I pioneered some research into HVAC infection controls relative to the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. I was also founded a consulting business called DSR Cares Consulting Incorporated. And in the spring of 2020, I was going in to do some work for some dental clinics in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. And I went in to start looking at the guidelines that they gave out for the reopening after the first set of lockdowns in the spring of 2020. And found out there were some issues with the instructions that they gave for the aerosol generating medical procedures. You know, you go to the dentist, you get your teeth drilled, the water sprays up the mist, that's aerosols. But you get a lot of nasty things that can hang out in there.
So you are trained in, you said HVAC protection controls and
Infection.
infection controls. Sorry, um,
Yes.
and that you recognize by going into these dental offices that something was not correct, and this is so after lockdown. So these are new procedures or
It
new.
it's guidelines. It's how you need to set up your system in order to properly mitigate the disease, right?
Okay,
So it's like your system will turn on. It's just that it's not going to be set up right to do what you want it to do, and you have no way of knowing whether or not it's going to work, right? And so,
right.
yeah,
So you looked into this, and you weren't getting answers, so you dug down to find that these new guidelines, the new guidelines, came from the CDC,
yes,
and that
yes,
these guidelines basically would ensure that this would be unsafe. Is that fair to say?
yeah, yes, because they actually took something that worked, and it doesn't matter what formula you use. Air has a mixing efficiency, right? This is properties of air that don't change. So now you're what it does is that you're going to create an unknown number of failures in an unknown number of systems that you can't account for. You're going to know that there's going to be some failures, you just don't know how many. So what you could do is distribute a biological weapon and make it appear as a random outbreak because you don't know where they're going to occur, you just know that they're going to occur. And this is extremely wrong and should never be done, right? And the way that it was implemented is that it would throw all the responsibility onto the business owner to take the liability when the government handed out something that was wrong and they knew it.
Let me just ask you. You said that you could distribute a biological weapon and nobody would be the wiser. Is that correct?
Yes, it would appear random.
Right. So, how did you know that a biological weapon? I'm assuming that's what you're saying, that a biological weapon was being distributed. How did you know that was happening?
Well, it really doesn't matter whether at that point in time it didn't matter whether or not there was a biological weapon or it was naturally occurring. What you've created was a delivery system to spread disease, and it could be anything. It could be naturally occurring. It could not be. It's like the creation of a delivery system for a biological weapon to be made to look like a random outbreak is considered an act preparatory to levying war, and that's under the Criminal Code of Canada. That's high treason, right? You just can't do that.
Okay, so I just really want to clarify this because it's the technical part that's always been difficult for me to grasp, and I'm sure that that's the case for many people, is to understand what does HVAC have to do with high treason. So this is really important. So what you're saying is that whether or not there's a biological weapon, that it's the if that what they did create was a delivery system basically designed to spread disease and have it look random. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's exactly accurate. You see, engineering is very different from other sciences. It's an applied science. So when you see a formula, the formula is derived from destructive and or non-destructive testing. So it actually represents something that works in the real world. That's how the formulas are created in engineering. And so there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of experimentation that they come up with these things. And so when you take something that's represented to replicate something that exists, and then you take away a piece of information, and you have no justification scientifically, then it's not going to work. And it's impossible for it to work because you take away the all mention of the efficiency, which is not even rational. And I did freedom of information requests to the Ministry of Health in Saskatchewan and the Public Health Authority of Canada, and there was nothing. Public Health Authority of Canada didn't even bother to respond to give the information request. Saskatchewan just flat out said, there's nothing, no justification for it. And there is none. There really shouldn't be.
So you either got a response that said, okay, yeah, there's no justification, or you got no response.
Yes.
So you actually had freedom of information requests where you had no response.
Yes, Len, that's been like probably almost 2 years from Public Health Agency of Canada.
Okay.
And yeah,
Okay. So you find this information, and what is the next thing that you do?
well, I started to talk to people and say, well, this is bad. My first thought was like, well, my child could get sick. Somebody else's child, your loved one, could be exposed to disease. This is wrong. Like, no one should be put in that position. And then, I got pushback and I continued to press forward with it. My daughter, who worked at the Saskatchewan Health Authority, saw that they were implementing the guidelines wrong in their hospitals.
Okay, so Keisha, I want to have you pick up this part. So, your father showed you this information. So, what was your initial? Did you understand the information? Did you understand the implications of it? What was your initial reaction, and what did you do?
Yeah, so my dad shared the information with me. I worked at Saskatchewan Hospital, which is a maximum security prison and hospital facility for the criminally and mentally insane, split between two halves. And I noticed that, like my dad said, that some things were not being done correctly, and I filed an official OH&S complaint with the information he gave me, and just instantly received some pushbacks and some threats from my workplace.
So, what kind of
So,
threats did you have from your work?
well, they told me that I needed to self-isolate as soon as I filed the complaint with OH&S. So after that, they kept telling me I need to self-isolate, and started calling me repeatedly, talking to me about potentially other things. And so I just pers- continued doing what I was initially doing. And
So, why were they asking you to self isolate? For what was their justification?
well, they claimed I came in contact with somebody who was a confirmed case of COVID the day that
I
I went
see.
to the dentist with my father, but we were the only two in the office, and they didn't contact trace him, but they contact traced me. So this is interesting. Um,
I
and
was
so
sitting
they just
beside her.
you sitting
Yeah.
beside me the entire time. Um, so this was very interesting, including during the appointment. So I just went on about my business. They ended up, giving me some papers saying that I am mandated by the province, the Minister of Health or whatever in Saskatchewan, to self-isolate. They gave me some paperwork saying that if I required, if I had a pressing necessity and needed to leave my home, that I could please wear a mask. So we went to the Battleford Court of Queen's Bench at the time. It's now King's Bench, if you can even say that. And, we're going to go on July 23rd to speak about some of these complaints that we had made um, with various agencies that were involved, like, rogue members of the RCMP, the Saskatchewan Health Authority, which is, of course, the provincial governing body for my prison, people in the credit union, things like that. And as soon as we got to as soon as we pulled up in my car to the Court of Queen's Bench, the RCMP pulled up behind us, about 6 or 7 male officers, manhandled me, threw me on the floor, said that I didn't have a mask. I'm not supposed to be out in public, and drove me off to the North Battleford Hospital, where they interrogated me for about 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning until 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening about the whereabouts of my father's corporation, why we were going to court against them, his engineering report, and things like that. And then uh, obviously, I'm not an engineer, so I can't exactly explain engineering, and I probably should not. People would get hurt. Um, and so they also tried to force me to take a COVID test, and I refused. They said if I just took the test, they would let me finish isolation in a hotel. And when I refused, they told me that they would take me to prison with criminals and hold me there out of province. And if anything happened to me on the way there, they wouldn't be able to help me if anything bad happened to me. And so um, I said, well, do what you will, because I don't have the information that you require or that you seek. And so they ended up taking me to my place of employment, my prison facility. They held me at the prison end of the facility. They emptied an entire wing of the prison, and they held me there for 8 days. And they didn't tell anyone in my family where I was. They didn't clothe me properly. They didn't feed me properly. I was in a small room for 23 hours a day, locked down. Yeah.
Did you? I mean, it's such an incredible story, and I know for some people it must seem impossible that this could happen in Canada. For other people, because of what we've seen through the convoy, through the Coots Four, we are familiar with this kind of thing happening in Canada. But for many people, it must be unbelievable. How is it? How is it, and I'll ask this to either of you, how is it that you're dealing with that part of it? I mean, and I want you to continue your story, but even just this much, how is it that you deal with this?
Jesus, I mean, faith in God. Like, really, it's the biggest thing. Just one thing to go before we continue that was overlooked is
Yeah.
that I filed criminal complaints on July 3rd of 2020 with the Battleford's RCMP, and I filed two criminal complaints for with respect to COVID. There were other criminal complaints involving several other people, but there was criminal negligence based on the engineering guidelines fought by myself and the corporation DSR Cares Consulting Incorporated. So the Saskatchewan Health Authority, who was a defendant there, well, they got the RCMP to bring me to the Saskatchewan Health Authority facility to say that I was crazy. They didn't examine me. I asked to see the warrant, and under the Mental Health Services Act, the RCMP is supposed to actually present the warrant to the doctor the minute they bring me in, and I'm supposed to be able to see the warrant. I asked them where the warrant was. They didn't have the warrant. I asked for it multiple times. Even in the arrest video, they can see me asking for the warrant because I know that I can see the warrant. And in that specific piece of legislation, I have to see the warrant, right?
Is this the footage that I've seen of the two of you being arrested? Is that
Yes, that's it. That's
okay?
exactly it.
Where you're asking for the warrant?
Yes. And so when I got in there, I said, well, why is it that you are the defendants bringing me here on the day of court? I said, where's the warrant? And the doctor was trying to ask me, you know why you're here? I said, no, I don't care. I said, I want to see this warrant. And when I kept asking for the warrant, which is my right to see, the doctor just said, go ahead, strap him to a bed. And they stripped me and strapped me to a bed and started to drug me with no examination. And then over the course of them drugging me, they began to try to extract information about the whole engineering report and other things like that. And that's torture. You can't drug someone and then extract information from them of something that you were reported for crime for, and I was taking you to court because they failed to do that. And then when my mother came around and then took pictures of the bed, they called the RCMP in and strapped me to it, and I have the medical records, and the nurse stated explicitly He thought that my mother got pictures, and they called the RCMP because of that. So that's retaliation. Again, straight torture, straight from the criminal code. If you look at that, that's exactly what you would do. And so this was nothing but punishment and so forth. And so while this is happening, I don't know what's going on with my daughter. I kept asking, "Where's my daughter?" Don't know what happened. So then my other daughter was given away. A no contact order was given. My daughter was given custody. She was already abducted unlawfully by her mother on June 1st without giving any reason other than her lawyer said so. And then they gave away the house
So
that
how
I
did,
was.
okay, let's just go back for a second. So your daughter, I believe, was 16 months at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And
Karis. Yeah,
Karis.
not me.
And yes, sorry. So Karis was 16 months and she was given to her mother. Was this tied in with what was happening here? Or is this a separate issue? Like how do these two?
Well, the judge was presiding over both matters, Justice R.W. Elson,
Okay.
and the court actually, from the occurrence reports and warrants that they served in the Federal Court of Canada, the judge, the court directed them the day before to prevent me from entering the court. That's a crime. It's called obstruction of justice. And so then the sheriff also participated in the arrest. And there was no mention of me being arrested in any of the court orders, either one. And one of them was just copy and pasted onto a piece of paper with no judge's signature, which is not even valid. And then the other one made absolutely no mention. And then with under the Family Property Act, you're supposed to meet, I think, 7 criteria as to when you're going to sell a property, and you can't do that on a first appearance. You can't sell a house somebody else is living in. There's no justification for it. So he sold the entire divorce basically while I was strapped to a bed and drugged against my will. Gave away custody of my daughter, knowing full well that I was arrested. And there's a number of people that had an obligation to make sure that that was reported. It wasn't. And then said that they were going to sell my house where there was a registered office of a corporation that had a valid lease where it was never notified properly with the certificate of litigation and all of these other things that were done wrong and so forth, and just wiped me out completely while I was being tortured. Now, regardless of how that happens, that's a violation of the human trafficking laws. You can't do that. You can't torture two people to take a child. That's life in prison for everyone involved. And people don't understand that because they say, well, the judge did it. Well, the judge knew what he was doing, right? It's a crime.
Okay. So Keisha, meanwhile, you're in prison for 8 days. And at this point, what is going through your head? Do you understand what's happening? How are you dealing with this?
I mean, I worked there in that very facility on that very floor. Um, so I knew exactly what they were doing. And what I was going through my mind is who's paying for this? Because I understand the finances of the facility as well. I just thought to myself, this is rather expensive to empty an entire wing of the prison for one person. It takes a lot to send somebody to that prison. You have to have a judge ordered. You have to have be charged and convicted. You have to be deemed criminally insane, which takes many months to even a year sometimes for people to even get approved to be sent to that facility because everybody wants to go to an insane asylum instead of prison thinking it's better. But anyways, some of those things were what I was thinking about, and then also why I was not allowed to talk to my family. I was wondering, what they did with my dad and my sister, because, I assumed they hauled him off after as well, somewhere, probably to do the same thing. Um, yeah, I was just wondering if they were ever going to let me go because they kept trying to get me to speak to RCMP people every day, a team of doctors and psychiatrists and RCMP, because they said, we're having a meeting about you and would you like to join us? And I was like, no, I don't want to, because I know if I did join them and they found anything that they just felt they could use, then I would not left that facility. So I just didn't say anything. And my grandmother, thank God, was constantly every day calling the police, making missing person report, but they refused to make the report for missing person.
Wow.
My grandma was like, well, what happened? You took her off. They said we tested her for COVID and let her go. You should see her in a few days. And she's like, well, I thought you said you didn't know where she was. They were like, no, we don't, but like she's fine. And then a few days later, they let me go. So,
So, what was
yeah.
the next thing you did when you left?
Well, after that, I was taken to the middle of nowhere by a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, Robert A. Cannon, and sexually assaulted repeatedly. And after that, I fled to the US because I'm an American Indian, Native American in Canada, you call it. And I just thought it would be safer to go to America with everything that was going on. And so on October 1st of 2020, I went to Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry, and uh, the American side, the Department of Homeland Security, stopped me and told me to come inside. I don't know why. I had all my travel documents, passport, long and short form birth certificate, driver's license, Native American card, uh, even my marriage certificate at the time. And when I came inside, they told me they're not going to let me pass. I said, why? They didn't give me a reason. And then they told me, well, why did you come here? And then I told them about what happened in Canada, where I worked. And they said that, okay, are you afraid to go back to your country? I said, well, yeah, of course. And they said, then you're under arrest. They arrested me. They took all my travel documents. Well, they detained me, I guess. They took all my travel documents and they gave me over to immigration. And immigration drove me from the border at Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry, which is also my ancestral homeland as an American Indian, and drove me actually to the border of Mexico and Arizona with Mexicans that they were going to deport. By the grace of God, I was not deported with them. We didn't actually go to the border, but I saw that like we were going to. And then for some reason they didn't. I ended up at Pahrump, Nevada, where they held me at a maximum security prison for immigration and military detainees for 7 months. And the only reason I was released is because I guess my dad was pressuring the Canadian consulate to confirm with immigration my Indigenous status. Immigration was trying to deport me many times to Canada. Canada kept refusing because you can't deport American Indians on both sides of the border, Indigenous people, like there's no border for us, right? And finally, the Canadian consulate in California sent a letter on March 18th, 2021 to immigration confirming my Indigenous status. And then on March 31st, 2021, immigration released me, but they did not release me on my own recognizance. They refused still. So they put me under a American Supervisor Program, kind of. So they paroled me to single men, and those men trafficked me around the United States, drugged me, beat me, held me at gunpoint, sexually abused me, recorded it, um, put it online, which was brought to my attention by somebody else, but I'm not looking for that. And did this repeatedly in multiple districts of the United States, and I received no help from law enforcement. I've been homeless repeatedly in shelters for victims of human trafficking, homeless shelters, and law enforcement is not doing anything. My tribe in Saskatchewan said they will not help me. Uh, I don't know. So yeah.
There's so much there to process, and I'm every time I've seen you interviewed or speak, I am struck by your grace, your composure, your dignity. How is it that you're able, how do you find the courage to speak so freely about this?
I would say it's only the grace of God and my father, really. A lot of it is very hurtful, and I'm still not out of the woods yet because people still try to find me, and I have no relief legally. But if I don't talk about it, if I don't expose it, it will continue to happen to more people. And the hell I'm experiencing, I wouldn't wish to my worst enemy. It's like the worst evil I ever saw in my life. And I just see the world different now. I feel I have a duty. I hate it really. I'm a very um I'm a very more private person and more introverted and very just calm. And I hate this, but they put me in that position where I have no choice either to is do or die. And so every day I have to wake up and decide, will I do something that will help me today or will I give up and let them win? And so you have to keep going. And I know that whatever happens, that I serve God and I I did my best and God knows my heart. So in the end it doesn't matter because I'm whatever happens in the very end, I know that I will see Jesus. Like Jesus knows that I did my best in this life and I truly have good intention. So I don't know.
I sorry, I'm so, I'm so moved by you. I really so the reason I started this show was because I wanted to understand people like you, people who stand up. You know, I wanted to understand, and still I'm fascinated by why some people choose to do what's right, even at the cost of their own safety, liberty, you know, because it's right. And I really got when you said that, you know, every day you wake up and it's do or die. It's like the stakes are so high for you that it's do or die.
That's exactly it. And I have a sister, I went through a little bit what she went through as a kid and I went through this. I was a permanent ward of the crown for 3 years, and my dad fought to get me back. And him and another woman, they both got their kids back from permanent ward of the crown. But I know the consequences the years after going through these situations, not in just the moment of the ward of the crown or being taken from the parent who cares about you. I know the years of hell that comes after that and how much it takes to really work on and to get out of it. And I know she needs my dad, and I'm this way. I'm able to handle a lot right now because of my dad, and sometimes I can be a little hard headed, but I know that's what she needs because is what I needed. And so I don't give up also for that reason because she's a baby. She didn't do anything to deserve any of that. And I can't, what I'm going through right now, I know that's what they try to do to her and many other kids. And that hell, like I said, I wouldn't wish to my worst enemy. And for my little sister, especially, I would do anything, you know? It's a lot. It's a lot what some of these people are doing. And I know people say, oh, who's they? If you go through the documents and look, but as we stated earlier, Saskatchewan Health Authority, the judges in the family courts that were involved in this, the people at my workplace or the rogue members of the RCMP that are involved in doing these things end up causing people to be homeless, sold for sexual and financial exploitation. I couldn't live with myself as a person if I just let this happen to people like my little sister, or if I didn't try to do something, knowing what I've been through, knowing what I know, I just couldn't sleep at night.
Why do you think it is? Because you're talking about systemic corruption. And why do you think it is that the people involved in this corruption are able to just sleep at night?
I think it is something so much deeper than I'm a Christian. I believe in a spiritual battle daily. I believe that there are, good and evil, and I think that this is a fight of good against evil.
What I understand personally about what you're saying is, I didn't, I never used the word evil before the last few years. I never used it. I thought there were, there was good and bad, but people are genuinely good inherently. But it's undeniable that there are very sinister things happening in the world. So, whether you're a Christian or not, I think I'm really curious about how people go about what they're doing when they must know. I mean, what you went through is wrong by any accord, whatever people's opinions, it's wrong. And it seems that there's so many people not trued up to their own values and principles. And this is really at the heart of this conversation for me, is like, why are some people trued up and others aren't? Why are some people adhering to that? So I want to just kind of give you the opportunity to continue the story to where we are today. And
Well,
Dale, if you have any comment about that, please.
I think that a lot of people are, I think a lot of people are very sinister, like you said, and I think a lot of people are very scared, which brings the same result. Because if you're too scared to fight for what's right, then your family and your children will suffer the same as, some of the people who are pretty bad. But I guess I'll let my dad to where we are now. I'm still in the thick of a lot of this, actually. But go ahead,
Yeah,
Dale.
I think there's a lot of apathy, or people don't want to believe that this kind of level of corruption is going on. And so they begin to start constructing ideas onto why things are happening. And you're like, well, why isn't your dad helping you? And I'm like, well, they've stolen everything I have, and now I have to try and fight for my two children. I've done this thing even following the rules better than the lawyers, and I'm still getting punished, right? Look at what's happening, pay attention, see for yourself. And anybody who reads and looks for themselves, they understand.
I think part of the problem, what you just said, if people look for themselves, but even with the most basic things we now know, through the NCI, we issued an interim report talking about the injection being neither safe nor effective. Right now, a lot of people have known this for quite some time, but putting out that piece of information based on the government's own document, their own approval system, which never proved safety or efficacy, we know these things. There's so much that's available publicly, but people aren't willing to look. How how do you deal with that? How do we deal with that when people aren't even willing to see what's available?
Well, I think it's going to take action. And I think that people who know what to do need to start acting and start sort of working more together on the same page, because there is a lot of lawful actions that we can take to avail ourselves of what's going on. Because the law is there to protect people. It's there to protect the innocent. A lot of the times it's being used now to not do so, but there's a lot of crimes that were committed between Canada and the United States, and people in the government in the United States and people in the government in Canada both work together to work against the interests of both countries. And in the documents and with what happened with myself and Kaysha personally, we have evidence of that. And so now we've started criminal complaints in both Canada and the United States, and we've been working with parties on both sides of the border. And so when the Americans realized that Canada concealed this evidence of a distribution system for the biological weapon from as early of 2020 until now, and it came from the CDC, they had an obligation to tell the Americans. Now, it should have shut down the COVID pandemic in 2020. That means nobody would have got a shot because they'd have to answer why they were doing this and why they were committing crimes. A lot of people to shut down your businesses, to take away all your jobs, throw a lot of chaos in the schools. And then a lot of the pharmaceutical companies would have lost money. But because there's a crime established at the first point of the pandemic response, then the entire thing is criminal, right? It's like if you robbed the bank for $100,000 and made $2 million, the cops are going to take all of it because all of that is proceeds of crime. And because of the steps that they took to continue and further that, just giving the shot by itself is a crime. And under the criminal code, all you need is 3 people to commit a crime more than once, and it's been a protracted period of time. And a lot of people have been concealing it. It's a criminal organization. So every person who ends up getting harmed by the vaccine or even taking the shot or dies should be investigated by Canadian law as first-degree murder. And every shot that's being harmed, it should be an aggravated assault or attempted murder or whatever else. And the laws in the States are exactly the same way. So now you're looking at organized crime and racketeering activity.
Okay, so you've started criminal complaints. And you said that we need to work together. So what is it you're doing? How can people support what you're doing?
Well, I let Kaysha talk a little bit about starting the CARES project, and then I'll talk about the criminal complaint aspect. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you would like to keep up with us and support some of the work that we've done, I started the Karis Project podcast. That's Karis. That's my sister's name. She's 4 now. And to kind of help give a voice to people who are in similar situations like us and like Karis. And my father kind of helps on the back end with the criminal aspect of what's going on. But you can find us on Rumble and Twitter. I think BitChute as well as Facebook. And reach out to us if you need some help or somebody to listen. We can have you on the show.
And so I've put together criminal complaint packages that can be used in every province in Canada. One's for 45 of the 50 states and federal packages in the US and the District of Columbia, and one's for the UK for people can go and file criminal complaints with anything tied to the COVID response, and it also anything that was exasperated as a result of the COVID response. And so working with whistleblowers on both sides of the border, realized there was an increase in the human trafficking as a result of COVID, and because of the conditions it created, and even what they're doing and pushing in the schools is also violations of human trafficking laws. And so that can also be included because they started to push it more because this chaos makes it easier to indoctrinate the children. And so we've been working with a lot of people to get this information into the courts, getting it before state legislatures, trying to get it before provincial legislatures to ask for inquiries with other people's evidence because you've got to use the the police, the court system, and the legislative assemblies, both on provincial, federal level, to start asking for changes because they need to pass laws to make sure this doesn't happen again. The pressure needs to be put on the police to do their jobs and so forth by the people.
You said, so one of the things is because the story is so incredible, and I know you must deal with it. I mean, quite frankly, everybody who understands even a little about what's been happening knows what it's like to deal with people who don't even believe them, don't even believe them that the injection is, unsafe. I mean, there's some really basic things that people do. How is it that you deal with that? How do you deal with people's disbelief?
Well, you know what I mean? Like, everybody can believe what they choose to, right? But then there's certain things that people can see. Not everybody's going to see everything, but everybody's going to see something, because you shouldn't be coerced to do something. Coercion is wrong, right? And when you coerce somebody into doing something and saying the only way that you can keep your job is if you do this thing that I'm telling you to do, that's also a crime. You can't do that, right? Like, that's in the States, they call that forced servitude. And that in Canada, that's exploitation. Like, it's extortion. You're violating laws, and they're saying, well, you had a choice. Really? Well, you could either starve to death, right, not have any money, or you could take this. And that's not the way that you do things, right? If it was good, you just allow people to say this is the reason why I should take it. And if most people, self-preservation takes over, and they're like, I don't want to die. This is going to help, so I should take it. Like, ask somebody who's bleeding out if they don't want the surgery to save their life. They're going to tell you yes,
Mhm.
right? So if somebody knows they're really going to be at harm, they're going to do the things to protect themselves. So, no need to coerce people. So you find an angle that you can deal with someone. If they don't want to deal with it, then there's nothing you can do. But eventually, as people begin to see people standing up and doing what's right, they're going to see, and that's going to change people's minds when they see action. A lot of people will not be able to do anything until they see the changes themselves.
I mean, it requires so much patience and understanding on your part. I think one of the things I see is so much frustration. And yet, with everything you've both been through, I can't imagine how you are able to hold that and not be enraged all the time. I mean, how is it that you manage that? How is you manage that you've got this very sinister reality happening and you have so many people who have no clue and might not believe you?
I
I
pray a
was,
lot. I
Mm.
mean, there are times where I have to just stop what I'm doing and go and pray, because it's hard. Like, I mean, like my daughter and I have people that chase us down on social media and get people to come after us, and, cutting off all lines of support and so forth. Like, try to earn money. People are trying to shut that down, and everything else like this. It's like the Inquisition. Not only do they go after me, but they go after my family or anybody who helps me and so forth. And this is horrendous types of practices. These are kinds of things that will drive people to suicide. And this is why, I spend a lot of time talking to God. And, my faith is what keeps me through it. And I have my family, and I talk with my daughter and so forth. And I got to be strong for my daughter, because she's shown a lot of courage. So I have to, I can't let her outdo her old man. So she keeps me going.
Mm.
Go ahead,
It's
Keisha.
really, yeah, go ahead, please.
um, yeah, I mean, how do we how do we deal with it? Is that the question again?
Yeah, how do you, I
Or how do we
know,
stay calm? Yeah,
yeah.
so I mean, I think throughout the situation, as everything builds, each new progressive thing that happens, you understand that in each situation, you need to maintain a certain level of composure, and that builds every single time. I mean, immigration, they had me on surveillance tracking system as if I was the worst criminal possible. I have no criminal history in any country in the world, charges, crimes, or convictions, and um, in that parole system, you do have to be more on edge because uh, even if someone in the house that you're living with doesn't appreciate something that you've done, you're not cleaning the way that they like, or you're not whatever, uh, you can be redetained and deported. And so, and then also, immigration actually threatened to send me to a third country, a third world country. They said if I didn't leave the country, they would send me to a third country. So all of these factors into consideration, you understand that um, if you act out a certain way or present a certain emotion, you're going to be punished for it. And you have to be the rational person. You have to be reasonable despite all the wrongs that's doing against you. You can't afford to be unreasonable, even though it's a reasonable response to be angry and to be frustrated, or even maybe to yell sometimes. You don't have that opportunity. Like, we were in court the other day, my father and I, on video. We posted it on the CARES project. And I told the judge that the person that they had speaking on my behalf, Robert, was actually the person involved in trafficking and raping me. And they told me that if I continued to speak about it, that they would kick me from the court hearing, and they did. And I wasn't yelling, I wasn't screaming. This person also had made a fake marriage for both of us, which I later discovered. I don't even know how they've done that. But, everything that happens shows you that you need to maintain your composure, or else you're going to be the one that suffers. Despite what everybody else does that they get away with doing, you don't have the opportunity. And like my dad says, we pray a lot, but um, in real time, you kind of watch that. And I was speaking to a judge the other day, and he told me that the people who maintain the calm composure that we have are the ones that make it out of these situations. The ones that can't adapt to what's going on in this way, they don't, because then that reaction is used against them to do whatever that person wants to do to them as a justification. So I would say first and foremost is God, but yeah, watching in real time everything happen throughout the way, you really come to understand, again, is do or die. It's either you adapt and you control yourself, or you suffer the consequence.
I think of all of this horrific story, I think that's, I hate to call it an opportunity, but there's a lesson there for everyone else, because I want people who are hearing your story not just to hear your story, but to hear something for themselves, that has them step up, right? And something that has them step over the fear that would have them speaking out, because your story is everybody's worst nightmare, that you do the right thing and you are punished for it. But what you're pointing to is being able to be in any moment composed, and there's a really great book called Anti-Fragile, and that's what you are, right? You're able to adapt, right? It's like, okay, this is happening, this is what I now have to deal with. And I think that's where we are in the world right now, is that there's all this horrific stuff coming to a boil, and we are all going to have to stand up, and we are all going to have to adapt as things come. It's do or die. I'm so
Yeah, that's
grateful to you both. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's a really good point, and it's something that I think a lot of us in our society need to adapt more. That we don't have to be the one to react. We can maintain ourselves no matter what happens to us, because we're becoming the better person. We don't have to, meet people at their same level. Like you said, it is what people are so terrified of, doing the right thing and having the reaction. But if all of us were doing the right thing, then there would be no reason to fear getting that retaliation, because we would all be doing what's necessary. And that's really what's unfortunate. But that's exactly it, maintaining the composure. And whenever I notice that things are getting hot or dangerous, I slow down completely. I just, I don't want to say shut down, but I completely like guard myself, and the way that I approach everything, because I'm like, okay, well, something, I don't want this to go south. And I think the more accountability somebody takes for themselves, regardless of if it's actually their fault, the better the situation can go. You have more opportunity to sway it in a positive direction versus just saying, oh, this is all your fault, it's all your fault. That may be true, but then you're a slave to that person when you say, okay, that, because now you're waiting on them to change their behavior in order for you to get your desired outcome, instead of just saying, okay, well, that's their behavior and I'm not going to match them because they're going to get what they want at that point. So, I think our society right now, we really need to get back to a little bit more accountability and a little bit more courage. I think that would help a lot of people. And also, I want to mention that if anybody would like to get away from some of the, companies and things like that that are responsible for largely doing these things to us and creating circumstances for this to be done, and child exploitation and just a lot of the awful things that we're experiencing today, you can go to switch2usa.com/save save the children, and that's switch number 2 usa.com/save the children, and you can sign up there. It's a Patriot Wellness company, and so the everyday products that you buy, say at Walmart or somewhere else, you can actually get at this Patriot company that has everything all natural, doesn't exploit children or families. In fact, it's actually the reverse. It actually really promotes family and togetherness and things like that. You can actually help. And then it would also help what we're doing as well on the CARES project to help get people's stories out and things like that. So if you're interested in that, go to switch2usa.com/save the children, or reach out to us and we'll let you know what's up.
Thank you for that. That's really great. That's an action that everybody can take. The last thing I know that you have a ton of evidence. Do you want to just give us the website of where people can go find that evidence?
Yeah, you can go to www.dsrcaresconsulting.com /the-cares-project. That's the web page that has the links to that. There's also links to like some of our interviews and videos there. There's, if you want to support helping us to get this in the hands of people, there's links to a GiveSend and a donor box as well, because we're trying to help people navigate through the courts and teaching them how to do this stuff themselves and to file the documents and help people, preparing to do police reports and things like that so that they can get the help they need.
Thank you so much for that. I want to thank you both. And Dale, you're a hell of a dad. I mean, the values you've instilled in your daughter are really inspiring. I know that I think most people presented with the information you had would not have gone to the lengths you have to get the truth out. And I thank you for that on behalf of everybody. Kaysha, what you said about responsibility and accountability and courage is profound. It's needed. It's important. I think these are the things that we need to not only encourage, but exemplify right now and always. So thank you both so much for your courage and your time. I'm grateful to you both.
Thank you so much, likewise, for having us. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And really thank God, because I'm just some guy that listened to him, right? That's it.
Marcus Aurelius said the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Since our conversation back in October of 2023, Dale and Kaysha Richardson have been relentlessly in action in pursuit of justice. In February of this year, Dale's evidence package was served to a Texas Ranger who agreed to investigate his documented crimes against humanity. And last week, Dale's petition for redress of grievances was submitted to the Alberta Legislative Assembly. And you can find Kaysha's appeal to share this news and information through a link in the show notes. You'll also find the link to Dale's website with all the evidence packages for Canada, the US, and the UK. I encourage you to examine the overwhelming evidence and take the next step. And you'll find the link to the Switch to USA shopping portal that Kaysha spoke about. This is part of the same initiative I've been sharing every week. It is the easiest action for every one of us to take to switch away from the big box stores that are complicit in the destruction of small businesses and the largest transfer of wealth in human history. A breathtaking shift of hard-earned financial resources from the middle class to the uber rich. It is time to start putting our money where our mouth is. And as Dale says, we must come together to take action. Through Kaysha's link to Switch to USA, your purchase of healthy household products that you're already buying will help financially support the CARES project, just like your purchases through the Switchaway initiative will help financially support Trued Up. For the latter, as always, send me an email asking to find out more. Action, of course, is my first takeaway from my conversation with Dale and Kaysha. Despite everything they have endured, and perhaps because of it, they use action as alchemy, transforming unimaginable suffering into unstoppable suffrage. My second takeaway is their hero's journey as a whole. When have two people faced so many dragons only to emerge as stronger and more powerful than ever before, even before it's over? Our lives are opportunities to live as our own heroes, or to die with regrets for never having truly faced our dragons and slayed them. My third takeaway is faith. It has become clear to me over the past few years that faith is the shield we need to face these dragons. In the Richardsons' case, it's Christianity. Whatever our spiritual beliefs, what is needed is that which has us true up to our humanity and trust in the power of good over evil, that has us stand for the right, though the heavens fall. I'd like to hear your key takeaways from my conversation with Dale and Kaysha Richardson. Please share in the comments section, and stay tuned. Be true to yourself, and remember that we are the ones we've been waiting for.